Hi there. Thanks for being here. Welcome back to the channel. We are now in the second quarter of 2024. I have more really good books to recommend to you. So yeah! In case you're new here, my name is Summer Cannon. I am a horror author, reader, and fan. And that's really where I am in this channel. I'm in fan capacity. I don't spend too much time talking about myself or what I do as an author, which probably isn't a great thing. Maybe I'll get around that. But for now, we're here in a fan capacity. So last time you saw me was back in March, and I wanted to talk about some good books that I'd read. I keep seeing, and even now it seems like it's gotten worse, especially in the past few weeks on social media. There's so much attention given to the negative. There's so much attention given to bad things going on. And even here on YouTube, I see bigger channels. Obviously, you don't have to be much to be considered bigger than me, but videos that get thousands and thousands and thousands of views, and the thumbnail says this is the worst book I've ever read, or this author just completely sucks, and they get so many views. And it's just, let's give a little bit of time and a little bit of air to the good over here. Let's talk about writers who are doing great things. Let's talk about things that make us happy. So before I talk about the books that I read, I had a little adventure this quarter because I noticed I was reading books, and then just a few months later, I'd completely forgotten what the plot was. Reading the back cover copy maybe would refresh my memory, but I was completely blanking. And even now, I was trying to recount to somebody one of the werewolf books that I read last year, and I couldn't remember the character names. I couldn't remember the plot. This is a problem. And it could be any number of factors, but the fact is this is not how I want to be. I want to be able to remember these books. So I was seeing online all of these reading journals. And some of them are really fancy. You got to, do the whole sticker thing. You got to do the visually artistic thing in them. And that's not me at all. And also those things are kind of expensive. So I got on Canva and made a template for just a very simple, bare bones reading journal, but then I couldn't find a place that would print it out for a price that didn't make me want to crap myself. So that was also out the window. So, and I'm curious if anybody else does this. I love to buy and collect journals. I like to go to Marshall's and get them for $3.99, or other places where they're always on sale, and you can always get really just cool journals. But then I found that I was hoarding them because I thought, maybe I can make notes for this upcoming book I'm writing. No, that's not good enough for this fancy journal. I'll just use a composition notebook. And I kept hoarding all of these nice journals, and I thought, wait a minute. What if we used them for the reading journal? So I have basically defiled one of my nice journals, and I've been making it into my reading journal. And even the books that I don't like, I still talk about it here because I still want to remember. So it won't be the same problem with the Howling last year. I'll remember what I didn't like about it and the things that I do like about it. I do try to be fair. So having said all of that, we only talk about the good here. The ones that I didn't care for are subjective. That could just be a me thing. So that's just going to live in here. It's never going to make it onto YouTube. I'm not here to crap on another author, even if they are a big name author. Now, I believe I said back in March when I was giving my book recommendations that I hadn't read a bad book yet, or one that, not bad, one that I didn't care for, one that didn't work for me. This time I did. I read a couple that just, they didn't work for me. They didn't jive with me very well, and I'm not going to talk about them. I have my trusted confidants that I can rant to about books that don't work for me, and they're very understanding people who laugh at my annoyances. So we're not going to do that here. We're just going to talk about the good. The good news is, though, is I've got a lot of good to talk about. So let's get started. The first book that I read the second quarter that I really just liked is a book called Are We Out of the Woods by Glenn Rolfe. This is a sequel to his earlier novella, Chasing Ghosts. And I love Chasing Ghosts. These are both very short novellas, fast and filthy. I love it like that. They're very, they're extreme books. They're very violent. They're very fast paced. They pick up immediately. Page 1, stuff is happening. There's not a whole lot of exposition. There is some to make it an interesting story. That's where Glenn kind of shines as a storyteller, is he's really good with driving the plot. There's not a lot of stagnation with his writing, and I always enjoy reading it. And Are We Out of the Woods is a very, for how short it is, so much happens in it. And I finished it very quickly because, again, it's very short, but also because I couldn't put it down, because it just, you're so into it. And he's great at really making things immersive for the reader. Recommend. I also recommend Chasing Ghosts if you haven't read it. The next one is a collection called We're Not Ourselves Today by Jill Girardi and Lydia Prime. And this is a collection of 13 short stories, and it kind of goes back and forth. I think the first one was by Lydia, then the second one by Jill. Lydia, Jill, Lydia, Jill. And this collection was really dreamlike almost. There was something really, they're very different in theme, all the stories, but there was a cohesiveness to it, almost like all of these stories, be they quiet, be they extreme, be they otherworldly, they all had this very interesting patina of nightmare to them, almost like this couldn't really happen in real life. This is a nightmare. It was very good reading, very good writers. Highly recommend this. We're Not Ourselves Today. The next one I want to talk about, and again, I told you last time, we're just going through the TBR, and that can have all kinds of stuff. Maybe not all of it is horror. This one I read was The Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell. This is an infamous book. I like to try to read books that I know are going to be challenging reads, just to see if I can. And this one was challenging. It wasn't a fun read. But that isn't to say that I didn't get anything out of it. There were parts of it that were interesting. There were parts of it that were actually illuminating. But there are also parts of it, if you're familiar with this book, there are parts of it that rely heavily on psychoanalysis, which is now considered largely bunk by psychology. And it waffles a little bit between, there's a lot of leaning on interpreting dreams in that book, but there's also a lot of history, a lot of mythology. And again, it was a challenging read, but I came out of it glad that I did it, glad that I read it. I recommend it. If you're up for reading something that maybe isn't all about action and is about making a very large and interesting point, even in places where it misses, it's still an interesting read. Okay. The next one is Dirty Bombs. I'm so sorry, by Dacia M. Arnold. And this is another small one, short and filthy. This was a good one. And I don't want to give too much away, but except to say that I don't usually go for, this monster, what's in this book. I just don't. But every now and then one will come across my desk and I'll read it and be like, wait a minute, this is actually good. And this is one. I did not expect the ending. The ending completely, you know, I love when a book does it. It's well written. The characters are very well done. The action is well done. This is a fantastic book. Pick it up. If you haven't read it, give it a try. Dacia really nailed it with this one. The next one is Uncanny Banquet, edited by Ramsey Campbell. This one is an anthology, and in the foreword, Ramsey Campbell makes the point that he really wanted to make a collection of soft supernatural stories. Nothing that's too extreme, nothing that's too out there. He wanted a collection of stories that maybe They can be nebulous. Maybe it's supernatural, maybe it's not. It's all very soft. And I think it was fabulous. I loved every story. Maybe I didn't get them all. Because again, with the nebulous tendencies of some of these stories, it was hard. But these were great stories. These were masters of their craft. Some of them long since passed. Some of them still around. I really enjoyed this. Highly, highly recommend. But I want to make a point about snobbery in reading. So the first book that I talk about on here is an extreme horror book. Very, very violent, very, very fast paced. And then this one, it's very quiet, very soft, very, very soft touch kind of horror. And I don't think everybody has to be like me because I'm perfect or anything. Absolutely not. I suck in a million ways. But I think people who are snobs in reading are very boring people. Like what you like, absolutely. But also dare to try something new. And the stakes are so low in reading. The stakes are so low. If you don't like it, if it didn't work for you, no big deal. You don't have to finish it. You know, you can check the books out from the library for free. Maybe you find an ebook on super sale where it's only like 99 cents. That's okay. But give these things a try. Read the genre. Really give it all a read, because I think you'd be surprised how much writing and storytelling of value is across all the spectrums. Give it all a try. Don't be a snob. Don't be stuck. Because again, the stakes are so low. You're not hurting anything. You're not hurting yourself. Maybe you're giving up a bit of time, but look how much time you spend on your phone doom scrolling anyway. Why not give it to a book, to an author you assume you're not going to like? Give them a try. Can't hurt anything. But at Uncanny Banquet, huge recommend. I have no idea if this is even still in print. I got it at a used bookstore. Blew me away. I loved this book. Next is Brimstone by Cherie Priest. I was told that's how it's pronounced. If I'm wrong, I'm so sorry. I loved this book. Now, going back to the whole please don't be stuck in one place thing. I have learned as a reader and as a writer in my decade of doing this that there is a difference between a storyteller and a writer, like uppercase W writer. And I love a storyteller. I love someone who puts something out there, and my life is better for having found that. But I also love a writer, someone who makes a meal out of their words, someone who really understands the art of choosing that right word, of crafting that perfect sentence. This book was fantastic, and this book nailed the ending. If you have listened to me on any of the millions of things I've done online, if you've read any interview I've given, I say this all the time, endings are hard. And I'm usually like very conscious of the fact that I need to be forgiving of a great book that didn't quite nail the ending, because endings are hard. And when I find a book that gets it right, that nails that ending, my life is made. This book did it. It nailed the ending. This is a dual POV book. So it's between two people and their POVs. And when they meet, something that's really interesting that she does is we get the point of view of the person viewing the other person, and how they view this person is different from how they view themselves. And it's done very lightly. It's done very delicately, but it's true to life in a way that I just adored. I loved this book. It's not super heavy on the horror, but it is horror. I knew where it was going because I am a person with a certain set of knowledge that I knew exactly where it was going. I don't think you're supposed to, but it didn't ruin anything for me because I knew who the person was, because I knew what the surprise was. It didn't ruin anything for me. But if you read it and you don't know where it's going and you finally get it and you're like, oh, that's really neat. This is a great book. Highly recommend. The next book is actually a book I got to blurb. And I don't know that it would have ever come across my attention otherwise, except for the fact that it has witch in the title, and you know I love those. But, I loved this book. I won't always talk about books that I blurb, just because sometimes I'll blurb a book and I'll objectively say what's great about it, but maybe personally it wouldn't be something that I would reach out for on my own. But this book, I loved it. I loved every second of it. That book is The Wicker Witch by Cheryl Lowe. So, yeah, this isn't a short one. It was a longer work, but it was worth it. This feeling of isolation, of being trapped, of being circled by danger, and the circle is just getting tighter and tighter and tighter around you. This was a very well done book and absolutely recommend. I'm happy I got to blurb it, very happy. I bought myself a copy so that a piece of it will always live on my shelf, so when I look at it, I'll remember I liked that book. I really enjoyed it. The next one is one that I got to read early. This one isn't out yet. It will be out June 15th. That is Shadow Manor by Candace Nola. Again, fabulous book. If you haven't read Candace, and I can't imagine a lot of people haven't by now, especially on the indie scene, because Candace is a bit of a genre jumper, a subgenre jumper. She kind of does them all. I talked about Candace last year in the Year of the Werewolf because she wrote the book Bishop, which is a werebear book that I adored. But I try to read a lot of Candace because I think she's wonderful. Also, as a human being, she's wonderful. that helps. But as a writer, she's wonderful. So this was a sort of gothic, haunting book. And if you love ghosts, and if you've got a taste for old school gothic, this hits the spot. And something else I like about this is when you're reading, you can tell the writers who are well and widely read, who they themselves read a lot and they read widely. And Candace is one of those writers. You can see it. You can see that beautiful tendency in her writings because she pays homage to those greater works because she knows them. She's read them. And I don't think a writer could receive a higher compliment than that. I can see her reverence for the genre in her writing. Next, this book is the one I'm reading right now. I'm not quite done with it, but because it isn't a long narrative piece, it's a collection, I absolutely recommend it. It's called, this title is a doozy, so hold on. Banshees, Werewolves, Vampires, and Other Creatures of the Night and Facts, Fictions, and First-Hand Accounts, edited by Varla Ventura. And this is awesome. I love this book. What it is, well, it's in the title. Some of it is little pieces of fiction. Some of it is accounts of encounters with these creatures. The Banshees part in particular has been really interesting. I'm still actually kind of early in this book, but I'm taking a chance. I'm taking a chance in saying the rest of it is going to be completely awesome too. So yeah, that's the list. Of course, these will be listed in writing in the description box down below. Hi, hello. So I'm editing the video right now, watching it back, and I'm realizing that I'm simply just going, I recommend this book, and not really talking about the books themselves, not giving much of an overview or plot outline. And I originally started doing this because the list is a little bit long. We don't want to be here for an hour listening to me talk about a list of books. It gets to be too much. But sound off in the comments if you're at all interested in me talking a little more in depth about the books so that you know whether you want to read them based on things like plot and maybe the monsters that are inside, more so than on me just saying I recommend it. So let me know. If you have read any of these books and you like them, sound off. And I will see you all in September with the third quarter reading. So bye.